Hi angels, this will be the chapter 19 of You Are My Heroes by Lavender Thoughts 21 on AO3. Back home tears. The walk home was brief and only slightly eventful. Midoriya had made a complaint about holding Bakugu's sticky pie hands, and Aizawa solved the problem by washing Bakugu's hands with the hose in front of Taishiro's house. After that, there was an uneasy silence on their way home, and Aizawa couldn't figure out why it was unnerving. Midoriya was more still than usual, and was muttering under his breath again. Bakugu had his chew in his mouth, biting with force instead of chewing. "You boys okay?" Aizawa asked as he unlocked the front door to the house. The boys didn't answer as they entered the home, Aizawa closing the door behind them and locking the chain at the top. When Aizawa turned around, Izuku had his hand over his head and was cowering behind a guilty-looking Bakugu. The crimson eyes that usually held a type of contempt were now filled with guilt. "What's wrong?" Aizawa asked and bent down to their level. Bakugu shuffled a step back, and Midoriya did the same, still keeping his head covered. The green boy couldn't look at the man, keeping his eyes on the ground as he began to cry in anticipation of a punishment. Bakugu's eyes began to tear up, but he remained silent, his voice lost to the guilt lumping in his throat. The blonde looked down at Aizawa's shoes and arched his head towards the man in a bow-like position. They did the thing again, quiet hands they called it, all the way back home, and are now waiting for a slap at the back of their heads. "I'm not going to hit you," Aizawa said the words quickly as he realized what was in their minds. Bakugu thought he was going to receive a slap on the head. What was more was that he wasn't covering his head like Midoriya. The blonde knew he had done something wrong and felt like he deserved it. "You are not?" Izuku asked, his voice shaky, lowering his arms from his head and peering out from behind Katsuki. "No, remember I said I would not hurt you too." Aizawa reminded them of the promise again. "And not in trouble?" Bakugu asked in a broken sentence. At some point, the boy began to shake from the strain of stopping himself from crying. "No, you two are in trouble." Aizawa was going to say more, but Midoriya tightly shut his eyes. The boy began to shake and cover his head again. Bakugu, who was barely keeping himself from crying, couldn't stop it anymore, and tears began to flow down his cheeks as he anticipated his physical punishment. "You two are in trouble, but it's okay, no one is going to get hurt," Aizawa explained in a calm voice again, and reached over to pat Bakugu's head for comfort. The man once again instinctively wanted to comfort the boys with a soft touch, and before his brain could remind him that they didn't respond well, it was too late. Bakugu fearfully jerked back away from Aizawa's hand and bumped into Midoriya, who couldn't see with his eyes closed. "Please stop," Midoriya said one last plea before breaking out in sobs, holding his mouth with one hand to try to silence himself, the other hand still at his head for protection, but simultaneously grasping and pulling on his hair. "Midoriya, don't pull your hair, babe," Aizawa said softly and unconsciously reached out to stop him. At that moment, Midoriya opened his eyes and flinched at Aizawa's sudden movement. Immediately, the man pulled back his hand, mentally cursing himself for the same mistake he made moments ago. "I'm sorry," Midoriya yelled out one last time before his breathing got more rugged between sobs. The boy threw himself on his knees and put his hands over his head, this time grasping full fists of hair as he rocked back and forth, pulling them tightly. To Aizawa, it looked like a tornado drill position, with the way the boy's knees were at the stomach. The blonde was shaking now, curled fists at his sides as he looked at Aizawa with wide eyes, his breath sounding sharper and more frequent as he chewed his crystal chew harder. With Izuku losing it so close behind him, he cringed at the loud noise that made his ears hurt. "I'm not going to hit you, I promise. Don't be scared, I'm not going to hurt you. Nothing bad is going to happen." Aizawa began to panic as he realized that the boys were beginning to melt down from the stress of their fears. They were expecting something violent to happen, to be punished for their bad behavior. They were confused about the line between punishment and being in trouble. Okay, you're not in trouble. Look, I'm just going to sit down here. Nothing is going to happen, okay? We are just going to sit." Aizawa sat down with his legs crossed and his back to the door. The man hopes that making himself smaller will make him look less threatening. That maybe standing over them was making them feel small and helpless. At this, the boys seemed to calm down, Midoriya taking a peek to see Aizawa patiently sitting on the floor. The boys relaxed a bit as they processed Aizawa's tamed behavior, the man even politely looking away from Izuku's eyes to not trigger him further. After a few minutes, Midoriya stopped crying, but was still rocking in his tornado drill position on the floor. His loud sobs from moments ago are now just whimpers and whines as he tried to dial down the intense emotions within himself. Bakugu took a different approach to calm himself down when he saw that Aizawa wasn't going to hurt them. The blonde sat next to Midoriya, pulling his knees to his chest, wrapping his arms around his knees, and hiding his face in them. Midoriya would let out soft cries now and then between his whimpers, but even though these were quieter than his earlier sobs, Bakugo became very annoyed at the sounds his friend was making. For a second, he unwrapped his arms to take off his hearing aids, staring at Aizawa for a couple of seconds before deeming the man safe enough to let his guard down. With this confirmation, he wrapped his arms around his knees again and smothered his face in them. Effectively, all that together created a dark and quiet place for Bakugo to take control of his own emotions. After 10 minutes passed by, Midoriya was still in his rocking position and Bakugo in his own desensitized position. Aizawa, on the other hand, could feel his feet falling asleep with the way he was sitting. He debated not moving and dealing with the pins and needles, feeling later, but he could also feel a cramp coming on, and if he made a sudden movement from the pain, it could send the kid spiraling again. So he took the chance and uncrossed his legs and straightened himself up on the wall, still sitting on the floor. Midoriya looked up at the sound of movement. His eyes were puffy from crying, but it looked like the tears had stopped flowing. Aizawa quickly looked away so he wouldn't startle the boy. Midoriya went back to rocking back and forth, ignoring the man's sudden move of position. Shouta sat down doing nothing for a long time, and thought about the strong reaction the boys had right now. Their first morning together they had done an even worse thing, breaking out of the house and going all the way to the corner store to steal some food. Midoriya acted pretty much the same, apologizing and having a meltdown. But Bakugo's reaction was extremely different from day one. That first day he didn't have as a strong reaction as today. Aizawa was sure that Bakugo was not even close to crying that day, but right now he was. The only explanation Aizawa could come up with is that today Bakugo cared about what the man thought of him. The blonde now sees Aizawa as a caregiver, and maybe even a role model, and the thought of being hurt by the only person who's been nice to him is even more scary than being punished by the stranger he once was. After taking the time to think about the current situation, Aizawa also tried to calm himself down, not only from the seething anger he got whenever the kids regressed back to their fearful behavior taught by their past caregiver, but also from the stressful past couple of days. It was hard taking care of kids. Kids are loud and get dirty. They make messes that constantly leave a caregiver cleaning up after them. They throw things and make loud sounds with their items, and sometimes break stuff. They need a lot of attention and can't leave his eyesight for more than a couple of minutes before causing trouble. They take up all his personal time because even if they nap, there are still chores to do, like their laundry and every household chore he can't do while they're awake. There were probably more reasons why Aizawa deemed this job hard, but his blood pressure was rising just with the above excuses. Then why? Why was he taking care of kids that weren't his? Why is he putting himself through all this? Because kids are innocent. Because kids are the purest form of humankind before they've aged and discovered that the world is an unfair and immoral place. And these kids he cares for have lost so much of that innocence. Aizawa doesn't want them to be afraid. They are too young to be filled with this fear that will eventually turn to spite. These kids need another chance to feel safe again. Aizawa does this because he finds it more important and rewarding than hero work. This is hero work to him. There are so many people out there who are becoming heroes to save people, literal schools built for it. And while yes, they are in the literal sense saving kids, Aizawa felt like he was saving these kids in a slightly different but important way. Saving the essence of their souls and making sure they get their humanity back, giving them their chance to become what they desire. Instead of being filled with hate and fearful of the world, Aizawa wants to return the light to their eyes and inspire them to become what their heart desires. Wants to get rid of the fears they have so they can relax and figure themselves out as a human rather than by their trauma. The sudden cold, wet touch on Aizawa's hand, followed by the tickle of whiskers, made him snap out of his thoughts. It was Lady. The cat had come out of hiding to check up on her owner. "I'm okay," Aizawa whispered as he petted the cat's sand-colored fur. Lady purred and started to knead on Aizawa's thighs. To his dismay, Aizawa was reminded that he needed to trim her nails. The cat continued to knead and purr on her owner before suddenly walking off and slowly making her way to Bakugo. The cat sniffed the remaining pie scraps on the boy's calf, which were left there when Katsuki was messily eating the pie. Bakugo raised his head up to see what was tickling his leg, and to his delight found the feline he was ruthlessly following before, which was the cause of her hiding. The cat began to lick the pie, filing off his calf, and Bakugo's leg jerked at the sensation of the cat's rough tongue. The light in Bakugo's eyes returned as he giggled at the cat curiously licking at the leftover sweets on his leg. The boy slowly unwrapped one hand from his legs and formed an arch with his palm. Lady saw her cue and rubbed her cheek on Bakugu's hand, giving him permission to pet her. "Lady," Bakugu said softly and began to pet her from head to toe. A smile formed on his lips as he felt the rumble of her loud purrs, causing him to stop for a second to put his hearing aids back on, before returning to pet her again. Aizawa looked on amazed at how fast Bakugu's mood changed with the animal. But if he was fair, Lady was an emotional support animal. Although she never really emotionally supported anyone but him before, like the moment just before Bakugu. Midoriya was peering up from the floor, curious about Bakugu's soft giggle earlier. Once he saw that Lady was out from hiding, the green-haired boy slowly sat up to look on as Bakugu pet her. Midoriya arched his palm the same way Baku did, but the cat was too busy receiving chin scratches from the blonde. The boy didn't fret over the rejection. In the past few days he got used to Lady running away from them. "Are you kids okay now?" Aizawa asked softly, and Midoriya let out a whine. "Trouble?" Bakugu asked one more time if they were in trouble, which Aizawa now realized means that they expect punishment. "No, you're not in trouble." "I'm sorry I ate the pie." Midoriya apologized for the mess they were in earlier. "You're not going to be hit, okay? But you need to understand that you guys did a bad thing." Aizawa didn't want them to get away with mischief, home free, because they still need to learn right from wrong. However, he decided to stop it at that because Midoriya began to tear up again. It wasn't like before, though. Midoriya wasn't crying because he was afraid. He was crying because he had done something bad, and in his mind, doing something bad means you are a bad person. "I'm sorry." Midoriya's tears made a reappearance down his cheeks, but before the boy could break down again, Aizawa tried to calm him down verbally. "I know you're sorry, and I forgive you. Don't feel sad anymore, okay? You're a good boy. I know because you feel bad about stealing the pie. Only good boys feel bad. You're very good. I know you won't steal anymore." Aizawa reassured Izuku that he was forgiven, and the boy nodded at his words, wiping his own tears with his hands. "Bakugu, are you sorry? I know that you're the one who had the idea to steal it in the first place. My little thief." Aizawa recalled back when Bakugu had stolen some Twinkies from the corner store just days ago. "Sorry?" Bakugu apologized, a pout forming on his lips as he looked at the floor with guilt. Aizawa found comfort in the way the boy wasn't stuttering his words anymore. The blonde was not afraid. "I don't want you boys to steal anymore, okay? Tashiro is a good man. He would have shared the pie if you asked him nicely. Do you think All Might would have stolen the pie?" Aizawa asked. Midoriya and Bakugu shook their heads violently at the fake accusation of their favorite hero. "Heroes don't steal," Midoriya piped up, and Aizawa nodded to agree with his statement. Aizawa stood up from the uncomfortable seat on the floor, and the boys looked up to him. A question was brewing in Bakugu's mind, and Aizawa could tell by the way his eyebrows furrowed and his intense stare. "What is it?" Aizawa asked. "Food?" Bakugu asked cautiously, relocating his eye contact to Lady as he began to pet her faster. At the change of pace, the cat let out an annoyed meow and walked away. "Do we get to eat today even though we did something bad?" Midoriya asked, and Aizawa let out a sad sigh. "Yes, you will eat today and tomorrow and all the days after that. You will always eat every day because young heroes need to eat to get big and strong." Aizawa said the answer cheerfully, but in reality he was battling a rage behind his eyes. The boys seemed relieved at confirmation of their next meal, and were even calm enough to chase after the cat again. Granted, they weren't running her off as much as just following very close behind her with their palms up in an arch. Lady, however, had enough of the attention and quickly walked off to hide under the couch to get some peace away from the boys. "How about we have a quick shower, eat some dinner, then go to bed?" Aizawa asked the boys, and they both nodded, Bakugu's mouth watering at the thought of dinner. Aizawa had decided against a bath for today, and found that showers were more keen to Midoriya's needs. The man also didn't want a repeat of what happened with their last bath. He would slowly introduce baths again to help with Midoriya's fear of being submerged, but that was too much for now. Maybe in a couple of weeks. Aizawa stopped his walk to the bathroom as he realized that he was planning ahead more than he was supposed to. The man made a mental note to write down the boys' specific needs and what plans he thought would be good for them based on his findings these past days. Whoever Aizawa hands these notes to, he really hopes their new caregiver cares enough to read them. "Ah, fuck!" Aizawa mumbled under his breath as his heart dropped. He was so busy caring for the boys he had forgotten that he had a whole life to return to by the end of the week. This wasn't a regular case. He had forgotten to engrave that in his mind. The man looked at the boys peering under the couch, excited squeals escaping their mouths as Lady playfully swiped their hands from under the couch. These past days have felt so long, yet also so short as the week keeps progressing. This is the end of chapter 19. I'll see you in chapter 20. If you have suggestion, let me know. Don't forget to subscribe to know when the next chapter will be out. Have a good day, angels.